You've been told to be kind, to forgive, to understand everyone's pain. And you tried so hard that you forgot what it felt like to be respected. You thought that goodness would protect you, that softness would earn you love. But somewhere along the way, you started bleeding from wounds that no one saw. You smiled through betrayal. You offered warmth to people who turned cold. And when they left, you blamed yourself for not being enough. But what if kindness without strength is a trap? What if peace without boundaries is just silence dressed as virtue? There's a reason Machiavelli wrote not about angels, but about men, because he knew something most people don't want to admit. Goodness alone does not protect you. The world, as beautiful as it can be, is not always kind. People are driven by fear, by need, by desire, and often by their own emptiness. To expect purity from them is to invite heartbreak. So tonight, we talk about armor. Not the kind made of steel, but the one forged in truth. Emotional armor. The kind that lets you walk through the fire and not burn. The kind that keeps your soul intact, even when love fails you, when people misunderstand you, when life tests every inch of your being. Because to become truly unbothered is not to stop feeling. It's to stop leaking energy into things that do not honor you. It's to stop fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. It's to see clearly without bitterness, without illusion, and choose peace, not as surrender, but as sovereignty. You see, being unbothered isn't about indifference. It's about self-respect. It's about knowing that no one can touch what's rooted deeply in your sense of worth. It's when you stop trying to convince others of your value, because you've already convinced yourself. It's when you no longer chase validation, because you've made peace with solitude. And, if you're listening now, maybe you're tired. Maybe you've given too much, forgiven too fast, hoped too deeply. Maybe you're wondering how to protect your heart without losing it. How to stay soft without being destroyed. You can, and you will, so breathe. Sit with me. Let's unlearn what broke you, and build the kind of strength that feels like quiet power. The kind that doesn't need to shout or prove anything. The kind that lets you smile in the face of chaos, and say not today. If this voice feels like it's speaking to you, if these words touch something real inside you, stay a little longer. Subscribe. Share this with someone who's forgotten how strong they are. Not for me, but for you. For all of us trying to remember, the truth is the highest form of love. You gave too much because you feared being left behind. You believed that if you were kind enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, people would finally stay. You kept explaining yourself to those who never truly listened, hoping that if they understood your heart, they'd stop hurting it. But they didn't. Because people rarely see you as you are. They see you through the fog of their own wounds, their own fears, their own unmet needs. And that's where the disillusion begins, the slow awakening. You start realizing that not everyone deserves your softness, that your empathy can become currency in the wrong hands. You start seeing that the people who cry for understanding often refuse to understand you. That love, when given without discernment, can become a weapon turned against you. This is the truth, Machiavelli whispered beneath the layers of politics and power. The illusion of goodness is dangerous, because goodness, when performed out of fear, is not goodness at all, it's self-erasure. And you, my friend, were not born to disappear inside someone else's comfort. There's a quiet kind of power in seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. It doesn't make you cruel, it makes you free. When you stop expecting purity from chaos, you stop suffering unnecessarily. You stop making excuses for people who show you who they are. You start choosing clarity over hope, truth over fantasy. You begin to understand that better to be feared than loved was never about domination. It was about self-respect. It means this: it's better to be respected than to be adored for your compliance. Better to be seen as strong than to be loved for your weakness. Love built on fear of losing you holds more truth than love built on the assumption that you'll never leave. And I know that sounds harsh, especially to the part of you that still wants to believe in unconditional love. But love without respect is not love, it's dependency. It drains you, molds you, bends you into shapes that fit someone else's comfort. You shrink, they grow, and one day you wake up feeling small in your own life. To be unbothered is to return to your own center, to stop explaining yourself, to stop rescuing people from their own lessons. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's standing so deeply in your truth that no one's opinion can sway you. You don't need to argue with misunderstanding. You don't need to beg to be believed. You just live in such integrity that the right ones feel it and the wrong ones fade away. There's a kind of silence that feels like strength. It's when you no longer rush to defend yourself. You realize that your peace is not a negotiation. It's a decision. You see that some people thrive on reaction. They poke, they prod, they provoke just to feel powerful. But your calm disarms them, because power is quiet. It doesn't need validation. So you start wearing your calm like armor, not to shut people out, but to keep your energy sacred. You learn to observe instead of absorb, to listen without losing yourself, to care without carrying. You stop confusing compassion with compliance. You stop calling chaos love. And maybe people will say you've changed. They'll say you've grown distant, colder, harder to reach. Let them. You've simply stopped setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. You've stopped mistaking exhaustion for devotion. You've stopped equating silence with peace when it's really suppression. You've become honest. And honesty is terrifying to others. Yes, but also to the part of you that's still attached to your old self. That self who believed that being good was enough. That self who thought that love could be earned through suffering. That self who mistook self-sacrifice for strength. But now, you're seeing through the illusion. You realize that the only person who needed your forgiveness all along was you. For not knowing better, for not walking away sooner, for expecting depth from people who could barely meet themselves. You can love deeply and still protect yourself. You can care and still say no. You can forgive and still refuse to return. That balance, that sacred middle ground, is where emotional freedom begins. And when you reach it, you'll feel something strange. Stillness, peace, the kind that no one can take from you, because it was never given by them. It was reclaimed piece by piece from every moment you decided to stay true to yourself, instead of begging for love. That's what it means to be unbothered. Not numb, not detached, just free. Somewhere along the way, you stopped trusting your instincts. You learned to second-guess your own intuition because the people you loved told you that you were too much, too sensitive, too suspicious. You silenced your gut feelings because you didn't want to seem paranoid. But here's the thing about intuition: it doesn't lie. It whispers before the storm comes. It warns you gently before the betrayal unfolds. And you ignored it because you wanted to believe in the goodness of others more than the truth within yourself. But now you know better. You've seen enough to understand that people will tell you what you want to hear if it serves them. They'll speak of loyalty while holding the knife behind their back. They'll call you paranoid while they plan their escape. They'll promise forever and mean only until it's inconvenient. That's not cynicism, it's clarity. It's learning to see without the lens of wishful thinking. Machiavelli once said that men are ungrateful, fickle, and deceitful. But what he meant was that people are human, driven by their own needs. And when you stop expecting angels, you stop being wounded by their humanity. You see, it's not about distrusting everyone, it's about understanding what drives them. So you can stop personalizing their behavior. The friend who disappeared wasn't punishing you. They were escaping their own reflection. The lover who left didn't abandon your worth. They just couldn't meet your depth. When you see people as they are, not as you wish, you begin to reclaim your power. You stop trying to convince them to love you better. You stop rewriting their actions into softer versions of truth. You let the truth be sharp, because it cuts you free. That's where the art of being both lion and fox comes in. The lion has courage, the willingness to stand alone, to protect what's sacred, to roar when boundaries are crossed. The fox has cunning, not deceit, but discernment. The wisdom to know when to speak, when to stay silent, when to walk away without leaving a trace of bitterness. Together, they create balance. Strength without cruelty, wisdom without fear. You become both when you learn that silence can be louder than confrontation. That distance can be a declaration. That calmness, when provoked, is the truest form of power. You start realizing you don't need to control how others see you. You just need to control what you give them access to. And yes, people will test you. They'll push to see if you still bleed from the same places. They'll poke at your peace to see if it's real. Don't flinch. Let them see that your silence now comes from understanding, not defeat. That you've stopped explaining your worth because you've started living it. There's a quiet revolution that happens when you stop needing to be liked. You start walking differently, steadier, more certain. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop performing goodness to earn belonging. You realize that not being chosen was protection, not punishment. You realize that being misunderstood is the price of being authentic. And when you stand in that truth, your energy changes. People who used to drain you no longer can. Situations that used to break you now bore you. You start seeing patterns instead of pain. You see lessons instead of losses. You begin to trust the silence between words, the distance between people, the things not said. Because wisdom doesn't shout, it watches. It observes the small betrayals, the subtle shifts, the way someone's tone changes when they think you're no longer useful to them. You begin to move accordingly, quietly, gracefully, without bitterness. That's your fox. But the lion keeps your heart from freezing. It's the part of you that still believes in love, but now demands truth with it. It's the courage to walk away from what feels familiar but false. It's the roar that says, I will not beg for the bare minimum. And in that balance, you become untouchable. Because the world can touch your skin, but not your soul. It can shake your plans, but not your peace. It can test your limits, but never your knowing. You've built something inside you that no one can take clarity, and clarity is freedom. It's the moment you realize you don't need closure from them, because you've found it within yourself. You don't need to prove you're good, because you've stopped confusing goodness with self-abandonment. You don't need to win, because you've learned that peace is the only victory that matters. This is what it means to live unbothered, not in apathy, but in awareness, seeing the truth, honoring it, and walking away from anything that asks you to betray yourself again. There's a moment quiet, almost invisible, when you stop chasing people. You stop explaining why you deserve love. You stop waiting for someone to see your worth. And finally, you just know it for yourself. That moment feels both terrifying and divine, because for the first time, you realize you don't need anyone to complete you. You were whole all along. You just forgot. It's strange, isn't it? How we spend years giving away pieces of ourselves to be loved, only to find that real peace begins when we start reclaiming them. You used to confuse attachment with connection. You mistook familiarity for safety. You thought that being needed was the same as being valued. But now you see it. Love without freedom is just another kind of cage. And maybe that realization broke something in you at first. Because waking up from illusion always does. You start to notice how often you tolerated disrespect, disguised as passion. How often you stayed because you were afraid of being alone, not because it was right. You remember every moment you said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. Every time you smiled while your heart was quietly bleeding. That's when you start building your armor, not out of walls, but out of wisdom. You start guarding your time, your energy, your peace. You stop giving explanations where silence will do. You no longer beg to be chosen. You choose yourself, and that changes everything. Machiavelli said, "Fortune favors the bold," but boldness isn't recklessness. It's the courage to stop living in half-truths. It's daring to walk away when something costs your peace. It's speaking your truth, softly but firmly, even if your voice shakes. It's looking someone in the eye and saying, "I love you, but I won't betray myself to keep you." That kind of strength is rare. It scares people. They'll call you selfish when you start respecting your boundaries. They'll say you've changed when you finally stop being their emotional crutch. But don't let that shake you. You're not cruel for protecting your peace. You're just no longer available for pain that disguises itself as love. There's beauty in restraint. in learning that not every battle needs your sword, not every lie deserves your defense. Sometimes the highest form of wisdom is quiet withdrawal. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You stop proving your loyalty to those who wouldn't hesitate to test it. You start saving your words for those who can feel their weight, and when you do, life shifts. The noise around you begins to fade. The chaos that once consumed you starts to sound like static. You begin to taste peace like water after years of thirst. The air feels lighter. You realize you no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer grasp, you allow. People start noticing, though you say nothing. There's a calm in your presence now, something untouchable. They can sense that you no longer crave their validation, that your worth is not up for negotiation. Some will respect it, some will test it, some will vanish because they can no longer feed off your energy. Let them. Your peace will not beg. This is the part where the old you mourns, because she built her identity on being needed, being nice, being good. And now she must die for you to truly live. The death of people-pleasing feels lonely at first, but soon you'll notice that solitude isn't emptiness, it's clarity. You'll start to hear your own thoughts again, feel your own rhythm, remember who you were before you learned to perform. In that stillness, you'll discover the difference between being unbothered and being numb. Numbness is running from pain. Unbothered is walking through it and realizing it can no longer control you. It's the strength that comes from honesty, not hardness. It's the peace that comes from truth, not ignorance. You stop saying, "It's fine." You start saying, "This doesn't feel right." You stop staying where your soul doesn't feel safe. You start honoring your boundaries like promises to yourself. And soon, you notice that you're not losing people anymore. You're losing illusions. The people who belong in your life will feel peace in your presence, not pressure. They'll match your energy, not drain it. They'll love your truth, not your compliance. You won't need to shrink or explain. You'll just be. And that's when love will finally find you again, not the desperate kind, but the divine kind. Because love, when it's real, doesn't demand that you suffer to prove it. It meets you in truth. It honors your boundaries. It adds. It doesn't drain, and you'll know it because it won't make you question your worth. It will remind you of it. That's when you'll realize the goal was never to become cold. It was to become whole. To stand so rooted in truth that even betrayal can't uproot you. That even loneliness feels sacred, because it means you're no longer betraying yourself just to belong. There comes a point when you stop chasing peace and start becoming it, when you no longer need to prove your strength, because your silence says it all. The world begins to shift in subtle ways. You notice that people's chaos no longer infects you the way it used to. Their moods, their opinions, their storms, they swirl around you, but never quite reach your center. You've built something still inside yourself, something untouchable. That's the moment you understand what it means to wear emotional armor. Not the cold, metallic kind that shuts the world out, but the kind forged in self-respect, truth, and restraint. The kind that lets you open your heart without losing it. Before, you thought strength meant never breaking. Now, you know strength is breaking beautifully and rebuilding without bitterness. You've cried yourself empty, sat with your pain until it taught you wisdom, and now you see differently. You can love without illusion, give without depletion, care without collapsing. You've become the lion and the fox. The lion roars when someone crosses your boundaries, but only once, because your silence after that says more than any argument could. The fox smiles, observes, and adapts. You no longer waste your words on those who cannot hear you. You let actions, distance, and peace do the speaking. There's grace in that. A quiet grace that says, "I no longer fight to be understood." You stop trying to convince people of your heart. You start accepting that not everyone has the eyes to see it. Some people can only meet you at the depth they've met themselves, and you stop taking that personally. It's freeing, because you begin to understand that nothing external was ever the problem. It was your attachment to illusion. You were attached to the idea of how things should be, instead of seeing them as they were. You wanted honesty from liars, loyalty from the selfish, depth from the shallow. But truth doesn't bend to your hopes. It simply is. So you stop trying to turn people into versions that make your heart comfortable. You let them be what they are, and you decide accordingly. That's clarity. That's power. That's peace. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold. And being bold in this sense is not about conquest, it's about courage. The courage to see reality without looking away. The courage to live without pretending. The courage to love with open eyes and still stay true to yourself. And it takes bravery to live that way, because the world often rewards illusion. It tells you to smile when you're breaking, to forgive without healing, to stay small so others feel big. But your soul was not built for smallness. Your softness was not meant to be exploited. It was meant to be shared with those who can hold it with reverence. So you start walking differently. Not faster, not louder, just with more intention. Every step becomes a prayer, a declaration. I am no longer available for what harms my peace. You start to trust your solitude, not fear it. You start to honor your time like sacred ground. You say no without apology, yes without guilt. You no longer chase connection, you allow alignment. And in that quiet, you find joy again, not the wild burning kind that comes and goes, but the steady flame that keeps you warm from within. You realize that being unbothered doesn't mean being untouched by emotion. It means not being ruled by it. It's feeling everything, but choosing what deserves a response. It's knowing when silence says more than any defense. You learn to walk away softly, to love people from afar, to forgive without reopening the door. You no longer need revenge, you have indifference. You no longer need validation, you have vision. You no longer need promises, you have peace. People will sense this shift in you. They'll wonder how you became so calm, so unshakable. They'll think you stopped caring. But that's not true, you just stopped bleeding for things that don't grow you. You stopped carrying the weight of others' wounds on your shoulders. You realized that compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. Now, you give differently. You love differently. You live differently. Your heart no longer seeks rescue, it seeks resonance. You no longer run toward noise, you rest in stillness. You've learned the art of letting people misunderstand you, of walking away mid-story, of not needing the last word. And that's the secret of emotional armor. It doesn't protect you by hardening you. It protects you by awakening you. It doesn't make you distant, it makes you deliberate. It doesn't make you superior, it makes you sovereign. Because when you finally stop living for how others see you, you start living as who you truly are. And that, my friend, is the kind of freedom that no one can take. In the end, becoming unbothered isn't about escaping the world. It's about walking through it untouched by its storms. It's standing in the same chaos that once broke you. But this time, you do not shatter, because now, you see, you've learned that peace is not something you find in others. It's something you protect within yourself. You've learned that love without truth is illusion, and truth without love is cruelty. The balance, the sacred middle, is where power lives. You no longer seek to be loved by everyone, because you've realized that respect is a deeper form of love, and you no longer chase approval, because you've tasted what freedom feels like. There's a softness in your strength now, a lightness in your stillness. You've made peace with imperfection, with endings, with solitude. You've stopped demanding that others understand your worth, because it's no longer up for discussion. You've become both tender and untouchable, open yet guarded, loving yet free. And if someone were to ask you now what it means to be unbothered, you'd smile and say it means remembering who I am. It means letting go of the need to fix what was never mine. It means honoring truth, even when it hurts. So breathe. You've earned your peace. You've walked through fire, and you didn't turn to ash, you turned to light. Keep that glow sacred. Keep your heart soft, your boundaries strong, your soul awake. And if these words found you when you needed them, if they helped you see a bit clearer or breathe a bit deeper, stay. Subscribe. Share this with someone who's learning to rise the way you did. Not because you owe it, but because someone out there needs to remember what you've just remembered. That truth, even when it breaks you, always sets you free.